Hello, I'm Dr. Andrea Dawson, and I am the professor of violin and viola at MTSU School of Music. Today I'm here to talk to you about the 7th and 8th grade Viola MidState audition excerpt, which is the Dankla Fantasia. We're going to talk about some ways to practice it so that you can play your very best audition. And I want you to keep in mind that success in this case is all about practicing correctly. So pay really close attention to the ways in which we craft our practicing skills. Your very first task is to tune your instrument very accurately, because we're going to talk a bit about intonation, and intonation with out of tune strings is very difficult. We're going to talk about how to practice in tempo today as well. The tempo marked is 108. I think that's a really good tempo for this excerpt. If you can't do it quite at 108, but you can play it very beautifully, a bit slower than that, I would play it beautifully rather than fast. Now, that's to say, if you're a little off from the tempo, don't play it in the audition at half tempo. That's not a good idea. The other big topic that we have in this excerpt are the harmonics. And we have 3 harmonics. We have one in bar 2, and then we have the ones in bars 11 through 13. There's 2 more of them. And we're looking at the harmonic that's in the very middle of the string. We're cutting the string exactly in 2. So if I measure from here to here, the very middle is going to be where my harmonic is. And this harmonic is going to be an octave above my string. So if I think a D string, an octave above will be another D, then the harmonic on the D string will be that same note. And incidentally, if I push the string down, it will also be the same note, but that harmonic has this lovely light ringing sound. And so it's a really useful thing to learn. The nice thing about harmonics is when we play them, we don't have to worry about intonation as long as our strings are in tune, because that's what you get. We don't have to, there's no variation in where that note is. But you do have to place it correctly. So we're going to practice how to get into and out of the harmonic. And something I want to show you is that when we're in that middle harmonic, I don't think of this as 4th position, even though if I were playing the real note, I'd have to get into 4th position. I'm really just kind of pushing my hand into about 3rd position and then opening it up. And I call this motion the peacock, because like a peacock, it hangs out with its tail kind of just all tucked in. And then when it wants to impress somebody, up that tail, those tail feathers go. Like so, like a proud peacock. And so if we can kind of think of that, I'm playing the in 3rd position these notes, and then I want to get to the harmonic, I just do the peacock, and then I curl back up again. Now if I feel like, oh, I don't want to do, that's so much work, and I just do it part way, I'm not going to make it. You really have to commit to that motion. And when my finger is nice and flat like this, we don't usually get to play with flat fingers, right? It's all about curve those fingers and curl that pinky. But for the harmonic, I think flat fingers actually work the best, because we can kind of just lay the finger gently on top of the string, and it feels a little more secure. So we're going to practice getting into and out of the harmonic from the 1st position, which is mostly where we're doing that. So we are playing, we're going to practice with the 4th finger going from an A on the D string and going into the peacock and back again. And take your time and just practice that as many times as it takes. I would do it in a mirror so you can see if you're doing that, right? So the arm is shifting up to 3rd position. Make sure your elbow is closing. And right when you get to the top, you just kind of spread those fingers out and see if you can find the harmonic. Then we're going to practice going from the open string. So I'm coming from the F sharp, because that's close to where we are. We're coming from 1st position, so we're going to practice doing that. Play the F sharp. Then you can do the same thing, but go to the A string, the middle harmonic. On the A string is in the same place. It's an octave above the A. There's one on each of our strings, right? And then we can play from the, find that really beautiful low D, get it to ring. And those two notes should match, the low D and the D middle harmonic on the D string. So that's how I would practice those harmonics. Do practice that to be comfortable. When we get used to it, harmonics can feel very easy. It just takes a little bit of getting yourself comfortable with it. And they're fun to practice. They sound really nice, and I think it's a fun thing to play. The next thing we're going to look at is the shift in measure 4. Shifting is often where we're starting when we talk about intonation and accuracy. So we're going to shift this measure 4 shift. It also happens to be one of our double stops. So this is the double stop. With B natural and open D. Now you might think like, oh, I know where my first finger goes. I always put it, this is where I put my first finger. It always goes there. That's where it's in tune. And then you play it with open D and it doesn't sound good. And you're like, well, that's where my B goes, so it must be in tune. Here's my rule for intonation. If it sounds good, it's in tune. And if it doesn't sound good, it's not in tune. So it doesn't sound good, it therefore is not in tune. So we have to take the time to figure out, where do I put it to make it sound good? Hint, it's going to probably be a little lower, very tiny bit lower than you think. And that's what we're looking for. So we're going to use that, and then we're going to shift up. We can practice that shift from B to D using the D string to tune. And notice that my finger is just staying in its little seat, and the arm pulls it up and down without making any extra funny motions. My finger is light enough to move smoothly up and down the string. If you hear it, then you're squeezing, and we don't want to do that. Light. And notice I'm going to turn around so you can see my thumb if I get in the right place. My thumb comes with me. It doesn't stay behind or move independently. It comes directly with everything. I'm going to do a weird thing. There's your top view. You can see my thumb coming with me. Once I feel like I'm getting that really well, then I'm going to pivot my arm just a little bit to transfer over from the A string to the D string and tune that note to the D string. Sorry, to the G string. My first finger's on the D string, G, and I'm going to tune it to the open G. Free motion of the elbow closing, and then the arm pivots forward a little bit to help me play on the D string. And then I just do that a little quicker. And then I remember what that felt like. And I test myself by not hearing the shift. You might say, well, in measure 4, yeah, we have a double stop on the downbeat, but we don't have a double stop on the second beat. But I think we want to practice it using a double stop to make sure that G is in tune. Once I feel like, whoa, I'm really successful, this is ringing beautifully, it's in tune with my G string, I want to compare the fourth finger G to make sure that is also in tune. All the G's should be in tune. We will hear it. We're in the key of G major, so we certainly want all of our G's to match beautifully. Okay, that's one of our good intonation spots. Usually the first places to look are where we have to shift into a new position. And that is certainly one of those. Another place we want to look at for shifting is this great spot on the bottom line. Measures 13 through 14. We're coming from the harmonic. I'm not going to worry about that shift. All right, so we're going to start from this E, and we have shifts. Then we're shifting to the B. Then we're shifting down to the G. So let's look at this exercise, which kind of takes all those notes, plays them slowly, and then adds some extra shifting notes in just to make us really comfortable with the shifts. And it goes like this. Here's the shift, the added note. I'm adding an E to get me. Adding a note. So I add some shifting notes to aid me in finding my new position. So we'll try that again. I'm imagining going to the E with my second finger, whole step across. I'm imagining going down to the F sharp. All right, I think that's a useful little tool to practice that. All right, back to intonation, which is what shifting, we're practicing intonation, but other ideas for intonation. We want to pay very close attention to making sure that every note that is supposed to ring rings. So we call these ringing tones. Any note that's the same as an open string, meaning it's either a unison with the open string, a C, a G, a D, or an A, natural, not sharp or flat, or an octave or 2 octaves above or below. Any of the same note octaves should ring when they're in tune. And the closer they are to that string, the easier you can hear that. So there's my 4th finger D. It's a unison with the D string. And when it's in tune, my viola is really going to tell me. It keeps ringing versus it doesn't ring. It sounds dead. And we have other ringing tones. The very first note. There's that beautiful ringing G. We've got the A on B. Bar 3. We've got our G's that those need to ring as well. Right, so any note that's a G natural, D natural, A natural, or C natural should ring beautifully on the instrument. And so you want to check on those. If you suspect you might be out of tune, double check your ringing tones. Now we're going to practice that other double stop in bar 1. The double stop in bar 1 is the one where we have to use 2 fingers to play it. So we're going to practice finding exactly how to play that. The first thing is we have a G, which as we know is a ringing tone. So I'm going to practice finding that. Now, why am I doing that and not just going sliding around until I find it? Well, because sliding around until I find it is not how I'm going to be able to play it in context. I want to remember what it feels like to land it directly in the right place. So then I'm remembering, oh, that's the spacing. That's good. We're going to then, once we find it, glue it in place, not tensely, but just leave it there. Feel it not moving from its little spot while we find the second finger. And remember our intonation rule. If it sounds good, it's in tune. If it doesn't sound good, it's not in tune. That's my very, very clever intonation rule. So you can quote me on that one. You might notice that when it sounds really good, it's a tiny bit more of a half step space between the 2 fingers than you might have thought it was. If we put the fingers too close together, they sound kind of strident, And this is a minor 6, which is a beautifully consonant interval, which will ring beautifully as part of a G major chord if we get the spacing just right. So tune that and listen for it. And so we are coming from an open D. So once we find it, I would try lifting and dropping it a few times from the open D. That's a good idea. All right, let's see. The next intonation spot we're going to look at is our little G scale, right? Obviously, you should practice your G scale before you play this, but we also have one right in the excerpt, which is measures 5 and 6. Of course, it doesn't go up for 2 octaves. It only does an octave and a half, doesn't require any shifting, but we still need to think of it as a G major scale. So if we play just single notes and listen for all our great ringing, open, ringing tone, B. How can I tune that? It's not a ringing tone, but I have a D string next door. So that's kind of nice. And oh, it sounds very good when it's in tune. Ringing tone, open string. Well, that's not a ringing tone on the viola, but we could maybe tune it to the G because we're in the key of G. And again, not our highest high one, but just the one that sounds beautiful with a G. F sharp, which could be tuned to the A string. And our G. And I keep going. B could tune to the D string, and then I have my low 2. And that is a ringing tone. It will ring with the C string. So you notice how many of those are ringing tones, and the rest of them can be tuned to a string that's next to them. So we sure want to play our G major scale in tune. Then we have to worry later about our bow stroke as well. We'll do that. All right, so that's our little talk on intonation. Oh, nope, got one more. Bar 9. We want to look at this. It's actually bar 9 and 10, but I'm looking in particular at the first bar because we have basically an arpeggio here. It's got some notes in between the arpeggio, but it starts off feeling very much like a D major arpeggio. But we add in a 7th, which also happens to be a ringing tone. So we have a D major chord with a minor 7th, making it a major minor 7th chord. It happens to be the dominant 7 or 5/7 or D7 in the key of G. So we want to make sure that that F sharp is nice and high. And the same both times. And that when we come to the C natural, that it rings beautifully. So double check on that measure. We sure want to play that in tune. Good. Okay, on to bow use. We want to play in tune, we want to get all the notes, and we want to have a beautiful sound. Now, there is no beautiful sound without beautiful intonation, so do start there. But once we have our notes in tune, we want to play them with a confident, excellent tone and good dynamics and everything. And so the most important first thing to think about is the 3 Ps. The 3 Ps are posture, meaning we're sitting or standing up straight, and that our viola is up straight. And then the other 2 Ps are parallel or parallelism, let's just call it parallel, and perpendicular or perpendicularity. So parallel, what am I talking about? The strings have to be parallel to the ground. I know the viola is kind of heavy, but we need to get it all the way up on the shoulder, get a good setup, make sure that we have those strings nice and parallel. And then perpendicularity is the bow to the string, right? The other parallel that we can think of is the bow and the bridge. The bow and bridge have to be parallel to one another. And this is the starting point for a good sound. So if we don't have that, it's very difficult to make a nice sound. right? If I'm down here, or if this is crooked, then we don't have what we need. We need all of this. Good posture, parallel, and perpendicular. So that's step one. Then we need to talk about contact point, which is where we are on the string. Generally speaking, for viola, we don't necessarily want to be on the bridge too much, especially for this, but we certainly don't want to play this near the fingerboard because the sound will not be as good. So we're trying to find the sweet spot. So we would look in your mirror, because you can't really see from where you are, and we end up kind of right between the bridge and the end of the fingerboard. It's going to be mostly our best sound, okay? So definitely pay attention to your contact point. We're also going to pay attention to making sure that our hair is pretty well balanced. I'm going to see if you can see this. We definitely never want the hair to be behind the stick, so the stick in closer to us than the hair. Never in that angle. The angle that we do want is for the hair to be closer to us than the stick. But when you're playing a solo and my hair is randomly going too tight, you want to have all the hair on the string with the stick balanced maybe ever so slightly behind that, if you can see how that is in the camera. So that we can get a grip on the string and we're pulling kind of into our good contact point. So we're talking about posture, parallel, perpendicular, contact point, flat hair, and that all will allow us to use our relaxed weight into the string. And that is a lot of our good sound details. From there, we have to talk now about bow organization, and I have a few places I want to look at. The first one is the first 6 bars. So what I have done is I have written out a little exercise for us to try. We're going to finally turn our metronome on. I promised that before. We're going to do this at half tempo. So we are subdividing the 108 for the 8th note, and we're going to use the open strings that we play in these first 6 measures. So what that means is sometimes you see 16th notes under a slur, but in the exercise it's an 8th note. So 2/16 slurred is going to be an 8th note in this exercise unless it is crossing the string. Where I'm including all the double stops, I'm including the string crossings, etc. So if we play this, we're aiming to get a very good sound, to be in the correct part of the bow, to play exactly with the metronome, to hold the notes their full value, full quarters, to count the rests their full value, etc. And you'll notice that the 4th beat of the first measure is a string crossing, but the 4th beat of the 3rd measure is not a string crossing, and so that looks like a quarter note in this exercise because that is what the bow is doing. If we practice all of the best details of the bow in this first passage, it will be much easier when we add the notes to do everything correctly. So we're going to try that exercise. I have to think about this before I start. I'll play the wrong rhythm. So I'm thinking 1 E and a 2 rest and 4 a 1 2 E and a 3 rest and 1 E and a 2 rest and 4 a 1 2 E and a 3 rest and a 2 E and a 3. That's the tempo I'm going for. By the way, counting the rhythm out loud is a really, really excellent thing to do when you're trying to play it correctly. So here, again, let me give this a try on our open string exercise. Through that. This allows us to really think about playing a little heavier in the string on that forte bit. And then making sure we're being, really good about crossing the string in tempo. And then what do we do to play piano? Less bow. Rest and. Plant your bow on the 2 strings. 4 and 1. Notice when I'm about to play this, what will be the spiccato, I'm setting the bow on the string before I do it. So set. And I don't have to come that far off. We'll talk more about that in a minute. I'm going to do that exercise one more time, and then you can look at it and try it yourself. Ready? And. There's one thing I didn't do that I realized I should do. We need to play this up to tempo. So I'm going to do it one more time at tempo now. Let me get my brain reset. Yum ba da dum, da ya dum, ba da 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 da, ya da da da. So it helps to kind of internalize that rhythm. Do that better. What do you think? Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3. That's a workout. All right. I promise you, if you practice it that way, when you go to add your left hand in, you'll find it much easier to do all of those details. Okay. Goodness. So a couple more things about the bow. In measure 7, we're going to obviously need all of the bow. So I'm going to turn that metronome back on, and I need to count the 8th notes within each bow. We're going to do how many 8th notes on the down bow? Right, 5. 5 8th notes on the down bow. 4 for the half note and 1 for the 8th note. This is of course for half tempo, but this is good for building bow control. So here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 2 and 3. I'm using the whole bow. I'm also using a good contact point. We're supposed to be about forte here, using a good contact point and a good amount of weight to really get that sound out, and using all of the bow. Then we have to try it up to tempo. So also notice the down bow is much slower than the up bow. You can do the math. 5 plus 3, right? 5 versus 3. So we need to pull more weight for the slower bow on the down bow and less weight for the faster bow on the up bow. So up to tempo now. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Now, in the next 2 bars, we have, our bow is moving in quarter notes, sometimes crossing the string, and we're crescendoing. So we're going to use a medium amount of bow, but we're going to increase it for the crescendo. First half tempo, then full tempo. Full tempo. Etc. All right. And I promised that we talk a little bit about the spiccato. For this particular spiccato, it actually goes pretty fast. The way that I would practice it first is to play 8 of each note on this little scale, but in the tempo. So it's just play some 16th notes on the string to get the feeling of it. And then what we're going to do is we're not going to try that hard to do the spiccato. We're going to put it kind of low in the bow, and instead of trying to get it off the string, just don't try to play it on the string. I know it's a weird thing, but see if it works. So we're going to do 8 of each note. Ready, and. Like so. very much bow, chances are you're going to get very close to the correct bow stroke. If you try to bounce the bow from the air, it won't work. Notice that in every case, I'm starting with the bow on the string, and then here's as written. 3, 4. Yeah, okay? I hope that helps. When in doubt with spiccato, control is better than bow stroke, so play it kind of on the string if you're not going to be able to do the spiccato. But if you practice doing it lower in the string, I bet you'll get pretty close to it. Okay, let's see. Last one is the harmonics. So we talked about how to find the harmonics with the left hand. What I didn't mention is what we do with the bow. So for harmonics, the best sound will come from kind of a fast, light bow that has a good contact point. Contact point still matters. We don't want to have it too close to the bridge or too close to the fingerboards, but just kind of in the middle. We do have to hold them for a few beats. So that's a good idea, is to hold them for 3 beats or even 4 to see. Ready, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Let's try 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And so that's still a moderately fast bow if we use enough, right? Missed the string, sorry. Retake. Sorry. Right. In bars 9 and 10 are dotted rhythm practice. If you look at this exercise on the screen, we want to make sure that we're playing an exact dotted rhythm and not triplets. So we can separate them into separate 16th notes to double check that. We're going to do it first at half tempo, then at full tempo. And then full tempo. And then normal. To make sure that it's a snappy enough rhythm. Let's look at measures 11 through 14. Looking at how to count it exactly with the bow and at half tempo first. So here it is. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 1 and rest E and rest E and rest E and rest E and etc. I didn't do the decrescendo, I'm sorry. All right, so let's try it now at tempo. I'm not going to try to say it out loud. I'm not that coordinated, but I will try to do the diminuendo this time. Okay, so there's with the diminuendo. Notice all the retakes that make that sound better too. All right, my last little example here is looking at the rhythm of the grace note. The way they have it written, it's a little confusing, like where does it go? So this example shows you where I would recommend putting it, somewhere between the 4th beat and the down beat. And so at half tempo, 2, 3, 4, da 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 da. Except it's slurred. Good to practice it at half tempo for bow control. Here it is at tempo. Okay, so that's where I would put it. You can play it a different rhythm than that, but wherever you put it, I would put it after the 4th beat and before the downbeat. That's the main thing, is that the downbeat happens in the right place and that the measure that contains the grace notes which belong in the previous measure, that has 4 full beats in it. So do practice that with the metronome. And yeah. Okay, this is all I have to offer you for today. I hope it's been helpful. I wish you all the best in your preparation. If you have any questions about anything that I've talked about, please feel free to email me. My email address is andrea.dawson@mtsu.edu. Please enjoy the practice experience. That is what this is all about, learning how to practice and getting some confidence from all of our hard work. So please enjoy. I hope I see you sometime.